This week, we're going to talk about how bullying went from the playground to the palm of your hands. We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is author of the book Safest Family on the Block, Jason Brick. Jason, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Tim. It's a real pleasure. You do important work with this show.
Thank you. And apparently you write important books, so I can't wait to learn more about your book here in a little bit. But today, we're going to talk about bullying from back when we were kids on the playground and how it kind of carried over to the palm of our hands. I'm not sure how far you can remember back, but I remember being a kid and I actually got to experience that clock countdown that you see in movies where, oh my gosh, we're going to get into a fight right after school. I had a kid at that time. I don't even remember what it was all about, but a kid, some reason in elementary school, wanted to fight me right after school, and he happened to walk home as well. So I had that classic nervousness looking at the school clock. Oh my gosh, we're going to get into a fight. And actually, fast forward, I mean, it really wasn't much of a fight. It was just a bunch of kids standing there calling me names. I probably called some names back. I think I swung a punch and he swung a punch, and that was it. And someone yelled at us and we broke it up. Not much of a fight, but at least back then, that's kind of where it left. You got to go home. The bullying was over with.
Yeah, I think that you and I were talking before the show that we've both been in the martial arts for a very long time. I think a lot of people who got into martial arts as a profession spent a little time getting bullied in school. There's that relationship's probably causal. I remember being in 7th grade and a guy hitting me with a car, and everybody thought that was funny.
Hit you with a car?
Yeah. So with the mirror, the side mirror of the car, he swerved over and whacked me right in the elbow with the side mirror of his car because I was wearing glasses. Dude didn't even know me. Yeah, bullying was rough. And we talked about the evolution of bullying, and I feel like there was sometimes you'll watch an 80s show with your kids and see the bullying portrayed in the 80s shows, and they won't believe it was that bad, but it was. It was really bad in the 80s and the 70s. And then sometime in the 90s, we started to put the proper labels on bullying, which are harassment and assault. And things started to get better. And then smartphones and the internet happened and social media happened. And now we have the world of cyberbullying, where maybe there's not as much physical hazing going on, but it's constant 24/7 that you can't get away. Like when you and I were kids, we could have a bad day with a bully at school, come home, talk to our friends, listen to our music, chill out and have a reprieve from what was going on at school. But nowadays that's not a thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people think bullying just happens to kids. And especially right now with the power of social media, I see more and more adults get into bullying. The girl we had on last episode a few weeks ago, she went through her whole cyberbullying incident as well. But it's crazy. We have people on TikTok who actually, get paid to bully others because that's what their platform is, and we buy into it.
Yeah.
It's such a weird society that we live in now.
It is.
The biggest one I see right now is if you don't agree with my opinion, then you don't matter. I can pick on you. I can call you out. And I don't understand why we have that mentality these days where we can just hate somebody for a different opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, it's we're looking at the example of our so-called leadership. Whether bullying should be a non-political issue, but if you look at the right or the left, the stars, the quote-unquote leadership, the people who are in charge, engage in bullying on a daily basis. Where that on the right we have the man who's currently president calling people filthy names,
trolling
on his social media,
trolling people.
Yeah, trolling people just because they have different political opinions. And on the left, we've got a lot of people who want to cut off someone's livelihood because they say something with which they disagree. And to be clear, in America, because of the way our healthcare system is set up, if you're saying this person should be fired for telling a joke I don't like, you're saying this person's child should be denied healthcare because they have an opinion I don't like. So I think that right now it stems from the leadership and the the stars and the popular
Yeah.
people in our world, that they're providing that example, and a lot of the rest of us are taking that as permission to behave badly too.
Yeah, I don't like to get into politics too much, but when you purposely put something out there to get a negative response, I mean, okay, yeah, bullying is had to cause harm, but you're purposely trying to get someone fired up when there's really no reason to do that.
Yeah,
Just leave them alone. And it's really hard to teach our kids, that's not right, but well, why is that guy doing it? Like, well, different morals, different thoughts. They're not, I don't know. I don't want to call out how somebody was raised, but it's like, come on, man, you know, leave
yeah,
it alone, leave some people alone. But we even got the news. The news will jump on sides, and that's a problem. We have sides. There's
yeah,
this side or that side. And I was told a few months ago that I had this group of people I was connected with in town here, and a few of them left my group because I was friends with one person who had different opinions of them, who had different thoughts that they don't think. But I'm like, so what? I may not agree with this person on every single thing that they say, but I do like hearing the other point of view. I like to hear their perspective of what they think, and I like to understand, because that's how we should come together as a community, is we can understand both sides, except we would rather just argue and complain and bitch at somebody, and
yeah.
it's just simple.
There's a stand-up comic that I heard ages ago who said, and I'll butcher the actual words, but it was, if you can't explain the other guy's point of view without making them sound like an idiot, you do not understand the other person's point of view.
Hmm. That's
Um,
good.
and there's, I think one of the issues that we have now is on both sides, people are looking at certain things that people say, and it's not a matter of differing opinion. It's that opinion is abhorrent.
Yeah.
That opinion is evil, and sometimes that opinion is evil. Right? There are certain things happening right now with the tacit approval of our society that are evil. And it is our duty, and we're martial artists. Warriors stand up and call out evil when we see it. But that's for really bad stuff. And even then, we should be polite, right? You've been a martial artist for 30 odd years. I've been a martial artist for 30 odd years. If we have to kill someone, we'll do it politely. Uh, but what we have instead is this permission to bully as adults. And of course, kids are going to bully if we see that as adults. If the kids see somebody says something that people disagree with, and then they pile on 24/7, 100 million Twitter comments or whatever, and absolutely destroy this person who suddenly disappears from public life, then of course they're going to think nothing of picking on Becky's choice of clothing
Yeah.
in their own social media.
It's crazy. Speaking of parents' influence, if I was in school and I wrote you, Jason, a hate letter saying, Jason, I don't like you. Why are you in my classroom? Why do you look like that? I would, if I was in a good school that took care of things, I would get in trouble.
Mm.
I saw this is earlier this year, a lady who taught her son to send some hate mail to the president of the United States. Whether you agree with the guy or not, the fact that she taught her, this kid had, based on the writing, I don't know this person, by the way. I just saw it on social media, shared from one friend to another friend. Um, Based on the writing, this kid had to be like 5, 6 years old. And it was just a letter of, I hate you, why you look like this. But just like, why are you teaching your kids that this is okay? First of
Yeah.
all. And the fact is that she got so much love for that. Oh, you're such a good mama. Oh, like, I'm seeing like, are you kidding me? How
Yeah.
is this acceptable? I understand why you're doing because you dislike somebody. Okay, I get that. But do you think it's appropriate for adults to do this and to teach your kids how to do this? Because if what you're teaching is you're teaching your kid that if you don't like somebody by the way they look, they think, when that kid gets, maybe he is old enough for school. I'm looking at these with these words and all, like, how kids write just big
Yeah.
long lines. It's like this kid could be an issue
Yeah.
in
And I mean,
elementary
let's
and in
be
high
honest.
school.
If you're wanting to write a hate letter to the president of the United States, any president of the United States, and you're having to go after their appearance, that's just lazy.
Yeah,
Every president does so many things that you can dislike that you can write in. That could have been a really good activity with this woman's child about civic responsibility, civic awareness, how to do research in the paper or as though the paper exists anymore. But you brought up something really important a little bit ago about schools that have it together. About if you do something, if you bully in a school where the administration's on top of things, there are consequences. And I think a
yeah,
lot of us are frustrated. And not to, shameless plug, but in my book, do have a chapter on school safety and bullying. And the advice I give is there's the tempting advice and there's the actual advice that works. And the tempting advice is to teach your kid to just go stomp a mud hole in the first person who cyberbullies them, right? And that's tempting, but zero tolerance schools are a thing. Gang affiliation is a thing. Lawsuits are a thing. Trying children as adults is a thing. It's a bad idea, as tempting as it is. However, what seems to work very well is to, as an adult, go be an enormous pain in the ass. Generally speaking, most teachers, most administrators, they want to keep the kids under their charge safe. They mean well, they try hard, but they are profoundly overloaded already. They got so many things pulling on their time, pulling on their attention, that they're just not watching carefully enough. So if you go in and you send the emails and you schedule the meetings and you talk to their bosses and their bosses and their bosses, and you just make it more inconvenient to not protect your kid than it is to protect your kid, then usually things will get done.
yeah,
And it's, again, I want to really stress that I don't believe this is because teachers are lazy or administrators are not doing their jobs as well as they can. It's just that we have set up a situation very much like with law enforcement, where it is impossible for them to do the entirety of their jobs with the resources that we have given them.
yeah.
And we need to find a way to make sure that to just motivate them to prioritize the safety of our children.
A lot of it, I'm not gonna, you know, yes, the teachers are overwhelmed. They have a lot on their plate,
Yeah.
but a lot of it has to do with the admins of the school, with the
Yeah.
lack of poor policies.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen the policies. They're just, one thing will get handled differently than the other thing. Does not make complete sense. And the lady who was on a podcast in this previous episode was even saying not everybody will have the same experience, which isn't fair, because if you go to a store and steal something and get caught, I'm pretty sure you're going to have the same experience as the other person. You're going to get visited by the cops.
Yeah,
You know,
it depends. There's a lot of. I don't mean to push back at you, but there's a lot of research that says, for example, you go into a store and shoplift something, and you are dressed in secondhand clothing, and maybe not as white as you and I. Your
yeah,
experience will be very different than a middle-aged white lady wearing a nice dress. Be very different, generally speaking. And there's a lot of research that says that's the same as with school administration. But I think you
yeah,
get exactly on the point. One of the things with administration is that, I've been saying that school, teachers, administrators, they're doing their best in a bad situation. However, generally speaking, if you look at policies around school safety, student safety, and this includes bullying, this includes school shootings, the policy is not written for the protection of an individual student. The policy is written to protect the district from a lawsuit.
yep,
And we need to acknowledge that this is the truth of the ground we're walking on and figure out how to navigate that to protect our kids.
yeah. It's like the HR of the school is that policy is there to protect you, because those policies are tough to follow. If you don't know the policies, the school doesn't have to follow through the same way they
Yeah.
follow somebody else. That's why in my school, I had the policy printed off. And just a few months ago, a girl, one of my students, came up to me saying she's being bullied and harassed by these uh, kids in school. I said, well, here's the form. Have your parents fill this out, follow exactly what it says to do, and make sure you follow up with the school right away. But you kind of have to give that to them. The school doesn't advertise, hey, if you have an issue, make sure you print out this form. They're not going to tell you that. You got to be proactive and find it for yourself.
And that's good on you. And I'd recommend anybody who does run a martial arts school who's watching this, having those forms, having that first link available at your school just to pull out from under the desk. I think that's fantastic, because, our job is to protect our kids. And like we kind of mentioned earlier, going on and laying a really good front snap kick to the groin is not the best long-term solution for bullying, unfortunately, as tempting as it is. Because it's not the 80s anymore.
Yeah. Well, this is the same girl that I've talked about a few times, where a couple years ago when she was in elementary, she had a round kick a boy in the face to get him to stop, because she was looking for help on the playground and there was no teacher to be found, and the boy wouldn't stop hitting her. So, but I'm glad she, taking a different approach this time to call these boys out. But going back to the social media, so you say you're from Portland, Oregon. So Oregon.
Yep.
Portland,
Oregon.
Before we hit record here. I'm not sure how you're connected with your community as far as social networking. What do you see out there as far as cyberbullying, or how kids or parents behave online?
So I'm fortunate enough that, my oldest son didn't experience a whole lot of bullying. He was lucky in that he was kind of part of the cool crowd, unlike his father. He rebelled against me by being popular and well-liked in school. And so he didn't experience a whole lot of bullying. My youngest did experience some bullying, and there is he's not very active right now on social media. He's active in gaming chats. He's active in a couple of dedicated text groups with his friends. So he hasn't seen a lot directly. Both of them have reported to me things that happened to classmates where there would be a rumor or an unfortunate photo that got around, and it was absolutely brutal. So, yeah. But we haven't had a lot of firsthand experience yet.
So how did you handle that? Like, well, when you found out, what did you do with that?
So with both of them, it was an opportunity for us to talk about compassion and personal responsibility.
Okay.
Because I tend to be a little political, I also tie that into being responsible with the news, right? Fake news has become a buzzword that really means news I haven't investigated that I don't like.
Yep.
But back in the day, fake news was actual news that was made up. And talked about, well, here's a piece of information you received. Do you know that it's true? Do you know that it's kind? Do you know that it's necessary? I don't think that's something you should share. Do you think that's something you should share? We use the 3 gates. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Yeah.
And how can you find out if this is true? And that's what we dealt with, because, my kids, neither of them have been targeted. So we talked about their responsibility, and because both of them are trained in martial arts and both of them are fairly large.
Yeah.
Also talked to them about when would you step in? When would you assist the person being bullied, and how would you do that?
Yeah, I think that's great. Especially like the part you have to go investigate. There was a song back in the 80s called Dirty Laundry. Have you heard that song?
Oh yeah, Bob Seger, right?
Gosh, I don't know. Nickelback remade it a few years ago.
Yeah,
but it was the Eagles.
One of the ex-Eagles.
Yes, I can't remember his name. But if you listen to the words of that song is about the news trying to find crap on celebrities just so they had a story. So
about the old back when it was the National Enquirer and People magazine that would be throwing that stuff out instead of just about everybody. But that's That's an important piece. Now, if your kids do get stuck in it, because I have, I have advised students and families who are into it. The most important thing to do is document,
Yep.
document, document, document. One of the things, and this is a balance that every family, every parent needs to strike, because the temptation is to block somebody if they text, if they get you on social media and they start bullying you. But once you block them, then you stop being able to record the pattern when you go talk to school administration and the police.
Yeah.
There is a point at which it can impact your child's mental health so much that you do have to block them. And
Yep.
fortunately, there's a kind of matching trajectory where, I started early on talking about how, we call it bullying, but what it is harassment and assault.
Yeah.
And the younger kids are, the less seriously adults take bullying. So if your kid's in second grade, they should not have a phone of their own. But some parents are giving them to them, and you need to do what your family does. But second, third, fourth grade, it's best just to block immediately, because school administration, law enforcement will not take it seriously. So what's the point in keeping them exposed to this trouble if even if you show this record, no one's going to do anything about it?
Yeah.
Once you get into late grade school, early middle school, that's when it's time to start building that pattern, taking the screenshots, recording the times, investigating the screen names, all of that. And as they get older and more able to deal with maybe having that present in their lives without it badly affecting their mental health, that's also the time when adults start taking the whole thing more seriously. And you can go to the administration or to law enforcement and say, hey, look, this is not good. We need this. We need to fix this. But, long story made short, blocking isn't always the best thing to do immediately, but recording everything and keeping a file somewhere is the best way to make sure something gets done about it.
Yep, I agree. And then the good time to block somebody is if you don't even know these people to begin with. Like, why are you coming after me? Just block them. I've done that so many times.
Yeah, if it's some rando popping off on your social media, and that's that's one of those things that every parent has to deal with. But the experts are saying no social media until they're at least 16, preferably 18. I don't know any family that's been able to make it that long. Usually about 14, 15. If you don't know about their social media account, that doesn't mean they don't have a social media account. It means that you've forced them to be sneaky about their social media. But trying to keep them off of the platforms where just total strangers will come in and harass them for something they said or for a photo they posted is, we can delay that as much as possible. And then there's, of course, the other category of bullying, which is somebody at school who has a beef with them.
Yeah.
Causing trouble.
Yeah. You almost want to know which one's worse, but they're kind of equal. At least with one, you can block and try to forget about them. But sometimes you don't know who their connections are, though, as well. But I know if you want to see a lot of bullying or harassment, is go join like your local parents page, or we have one in town, the moms group, and there's so much crap in the moms group, or the stuff that they say
I don't want to
about
come
each
off
other.
Sounding sexist, but I joined a mom's group when we had our first kid, and wow, and it's possible that it's much more pleasant than that, and I just don't understand the culture. But wow, it was mean.
They will eat you up.
I have my own theories about that. I have my own theories about that, but psychoanalyzing people's it's condescending. But I figure modern women right now they're screwed. Because if you go have a job, they tell you you're not taking care of your kids. If you stay home and take care of the kids, they tell you you're not being a proper feminist. So you can't make the right decision either way. Whereas, as guys, you make dinner twice a week, you get absolutely praised. It's really ridiculous. And so I think that maybe that has something to do with how mean those mom groups are. But that's just
yeah. I mean, I don't diss on all the moms groups, but the one in our town, it's pretty bad. And actually, there was another group made for the moms group, because some of the stuff that the moms, or no, I should just say moms, because like
Yeah,
I can get on those pages too and look,
yeah,
and I'm not a mom, but there is a page in our town where you can just dedicate yourself to talk crap about other people or businesses,
yeah,
because you can't do it on the moms group page, so they had to make a page for that. And it's like, and these are adults we're talking about. These are
yeah,
adults who
yeah,
have to sit there and call somebody out whether they had a bad experience and just rip on
yeah.
that business for whatever. And then you got
And I think
Reddit.
that gets to, yeah, and I think that gets to one of the most important things we can do about bullying long term. It's just lead by example.
Yep.
Are we out there being mean and rude on social media? Are we following people that annoyed us in one thread on social media and hassling them for the rest of the day? Or are we being mature and responsible with the power of social media? I think, again, as martial artists, there's this. I don't know if you use these terms exactly, but you've used some concept like that about how when you're unarmed, you're responsible for everything out to the tip of your finger. You put a stick in that hand, you're responsible out for another 2 feet of radius. You put a staff in your hand, now you're responsible for out to 6 feet of radius, right? Six more
Yeah.
feet of radius, and on and on and on. And if you're with firearms, now you're looking out for a couple 100 yards. Now that applies also to social media. It's there's immense power that stretches throughout the entire world. But we need to be as responsible with our own usage of that as if we had picked up a weapon, because it is a weapon. If you look at the suicide and mental health impact of social media, it is a weapon. And we need to be responsible with it when we're seen and when we're not seen, because that's the definition of discipline, right? Is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. But
Yeah.
especially if our kids are watching us, we need to be responsible with that. We need to, if we're going to put this weapon in our kids' hands, we need to be responsible and teach them to be responsible with it. And we need to teach them, for lack of better, we need to teach them disarms and techniques for when that weapon is aimed at them.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of why you wrote your book, Safest
Yeah, a little
Family on the
bit.
Block. Yeah, let's get into
Uh,
that quickly here.
sure.
What
So
what
yeah,
got you
it's a
into
book.
that?
So my youngest was 7 when we had him. We adopted him, and it was an in-family adoption. His parents became medically incapable of caring for him. And so, unlike most people's parenting journeys, it wasn't try for a year, then you have 9 months, or the traditional adoption process, which usually takes a couple of years. It was, okay, I got 2 weeks to be ready to have a kid. um,
Wow.
and I just happened the weekend before he came to be in our house to be doing a gun disarm workshop with some people. And we were doing that classic gun disarm. Most systems have it where the gun's pointed at you, you get offline, you capture the weapon in the arm, and you push it downward and past you, right? You've
Yep.
done this gun disarm. You know the one I'm talking about,
I know
right?
what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, that'll not get me shot, but that barrel is awful close to a 7-year-old's head. And it just hit me how little of what I learned in, at that point, more than 20 years of martial arts training. I taught in schools, I'd fought semi-pro down in the Southwest desert. I taught at that time I had coached a Japanese karate team in Japan.
Cool.
I'd worked as a bodyguard, I'd worked as a bouncer. I thought I was a badass, but so little had trained me to protect somebody else. And then because I've had good coaches, I learned that the antidote to ignorance is go find people who know things. And I started interviewing people. And then during COVID, I had this whole, I had my COVID seizure, as I call it, and started my show where I interviewed experts and took the 101 best pieces of advice they gave me and turned it into this book here that came out a couple weeks ago. Now, this is dropping in August, and we're recording in May. So a few
Yeah.
months. It dropped last spring, but it's 101 pieces of advice, actionable small details that people can implement, and it's in very short, short like 500 word pieces each, so that you can read it
Okay.
real quick in a hurry while you're in the parking lot by the bus ramp waiting for your kid, or waiting in line, whatever. And it's divided into 10 sections with different categories, like one's on online safety, one's on school safety, one's on travel safety. And bullying comes up in the online safety one and in the school safety one because it is a concern for so many of us.
I love it. Is that book also available on Audible, or is it online, or is
So
it
we're
just a hard
working on
copy?
Audible. Yeah, Audible is coming. As of now, well, as of May, it could be out in August. It's available in ebook and print book format. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can pick it up at Barnes and Noble. My favorite right now, which I just heard of, is called bookshop.org.
Okay.
And you can buy a book, same process you do on Amazon, but when you set up your account, you designate a bookstore, a participating bookshop, local bookshop. And then when you buy the book, that bookshop gets paid just as though you had walked in and bought a copy at the store.
Hmm.
So if there's a little bookstore in your neighborhood you like, or one you're fond of from when you grew up, or what have you, it supports local bookstores while giving us the convenience of ordering it at home, which I like. But anyway, you can get it at all of those places,
Great.
and you can see the show. Yeah.
So, for some final thoughts here,
Yeah.
any advice for parents that are that have kids or maybe themselves that are dealing with cyberbullying and how they could end it?
So there's a couple of different things. First of all, I don't think we're going to end cyberbullying any better than we ended bullying. The best thing we can do is teach our kids how to navigate it. And
Okay.
like I talked about earlier, being an enormous pain in the ass at the school anytime our kids are bullied physically or cyber, either way. A couple of other things we can absolutely do is institute smart phone and online discipline at home. One piece of advice that I got from literally everybody I spoke to about device safety, and it's a hard sell, I know, but instituting a no bedroom, no bathroom policy for phones and devices. That they do not enter the bathroom, they do not enter the bedroom. That way you at least buy your kid 8 to 10 hours a night of reprieve from being online on the phone.
Yeah.
At our house, what we have is we have a charging station in the living room, and at bedtime, everything gets plugged in there.
I
That
would
way, that phone does not find its way into the bedroom, and also is fully charged for the next day's shenanigans.
and be careful with smart TVs. If your kid has a smart TV in their room, or like a
Yeah,
Roku device or a TV, they can get those apps right on those
absolutely,
devices.
absolutely. Like, and again, not having a TV in the room is probably the best call. Although again, a very hard sell,
Yeah.
especially if they were already having permission to do that in the room, because it's very difficult to claw that back. But and if you can't do that, finding ways to build breaks from social media, breaks from being online into your daily and your weekly routine, just so they can at least get some bit of time away from that bullying, especially if
Yeah.
they are being bullied. Get some, whether it's just, watching a TV show together, going to the park, going to your local martial arts school there in Mankato, whatever it is, just getting off the phone for a while so they're not constantly plugged into what can be a torrent of abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people want to find you on social media or follow you or to find your book, you have a website.
Sure. Yeah, we're at safestfamilyontheblock.org. You can find the show on YouTube, Safest Family on the Block. I'm Jason Brick. I'm on Facebook, and there's about 6 Jason Bricks on Facebook, but I'm the only one that's talking about child safety, heavy metal music, and tabletop role playing games most days. So I'm pretty easy to track down. And yeah, I love nerding out about this stuff. So anybody has any questions, comments, you want to call me out on something, please hop on my feed and tell me all about it. I'd love to chat with you.
Awesome. And for those listening, you can find his link in the description of this episode. And people on YouTube just saw the link go past their screen. Jason, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Tim. This was great.